This is the Wally and Methot Show, powered by Barrhaven Ford. Now here are your hosts, Brent Wallace and Mark Methot.
Welcome to the Wally and Methot Show, powered by Barrhaven Ford, the area's largest Ford dealer. Of course, don't forget, they are the home of the Roush-inspired BFC customs on F-150s, Rangers, Mustangs, and of course, the all-new redesigned Ford Bronco. Stop in today and check them out at 555 Dealership Drive in Barrhaven, or visit them online at barrhavenford.com. I'm Brent Wallace. He's the big mutant, Mark Methot. So Meth, I thought we were clear here. I wasn't going to ever embarrass you on the show. And yet yesterday you posted a video of you at jiu-jitsu of me throwing you down.
Oh, that was you? Are you kidding me? Wally, I would pay good money to see you go do a class, but you probably do well. And I'm glad you brought it up, because it's something that is new for me and it's challenging. And I recommend this to everybody. There's a location called Ground Jiu-Jitsu in Barrhaven. This is not a paid advertisement. I'm a huge fan of their situation there. They're a brand new business. It's a brand new facility, really nice spot.
So I'm more of a float like a butterfly, sting like a bee kind of guy. I'm just curious, when he threw you, like, did you see this coming at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a big mixed martial arts fan to begin with, but I was never able to get into this stuff when I played, right? Because the last thing I need is a torn shoulder or knee when I go to training camp. So, but I used to box. I boxed a ton growing up, particularly in my teens, which is good, right? You learn a new skill when you're younger. You tend to maintain it for a longer period of time. So I just wanted to get into it. I knew it was going to be very physical. I think I need that right now because I feel good. And so that was one of the owners of the gym, and he's been doing it for 14 years. It's incredibly difficult. I mean, he was in full control all the time. And whenever I thought I had an inch with him, when we were doing the live stuff at the end, like, no, he'd flip me on my back, on my neck, have me in some kind of leg lock. It was crazy.
Do you, does he have like a title, like master jiu-jitsu guy?
You know what? I don't remember. All I know is that he's been competing for a long time, and now that they're doing this, but I don't know what belt he has. I didn't even ask.
Because I'm just wondering like what yours would be. I'm wondering if you'd be like little tight.
It takes years. Like, this is something that you gotta, like twice a week you go in, you might get a belt in a year from now, maybe. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. My brother tried karate once. I was like, I'm out. I can't break a board. Anyway, we'll move on. There's some Sens news to talk about. On Tuesday, Pierre Dorion inked a new deal. It's going to keep him as general manager of the Ottawa Senators for another 4 years, possibly 5, as the team has an added year on the end of that as an option. He says the rebuild is now done and they're moving into a different zone. Are you okay with Pierre Dorion now at the helm of guiding this team into zone number 2, we'll call it?
Yeah, I mean, the team, first of all, we need to understand that Pierre can only get done what Pierre is allowed to get done, right? Like, to a degree, when they're restricted a little bit with salary and stuff like that, he's got to work that much harder to get deals done. And we all know, Wally, you and I aren't being paid by the Ottawa Senators. I'm completely unbiased. I'm a big fan of the team, and I just want to see them win. I do think that Pierre is in a good spot now that they've got all these young guys. They've drafted very well. They've produced some pretty good quality content out of Belleville, where they're grooming them up properly. You're starting to see the results of that at the NHL level. So for me, it's true. I mean, I almost think it would be unfair to release a general manager or coach at this point when you're finally going to see the fruits of your labor kind of come to fruition. So I think for me, he's in a good spot. The pressure is on now, I think, on ownership, if anything, to provide the finances to get this ship moving forward. You want to sign all your good young players. They're going to be looking for some decent deals. So if they can get that sorted out, I think at this point, you just got to let it play itself out, and hopefully the coaching goes in the right direction. Everyone buys in and the team looks really good in about 3 years.
Okay, a couple of points. One, I don't get excited when people say, well, it's only fair he gets to guide the team. This is professional sport. I know, but people are saying he deserves that. He's done what he's had to do. That's neither here nor there. You don't get the option to continue on just because, golly gee, you made a good trade. So that's number one. Number two, I don't like his, I'll say the pro side of things. I think they've done a terrible job of bringing in the right mix of veterans that they need to lead this team. Yes, there's been a couple of hits.
But then that goes back to my original point. Now,
is that
just are his hands tied?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I'm saying.
Owner.
It's like,
no question.
If it's not Pierre, is it somebody else under the same circumstances? Right. And yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right?
But
so
full marks, and I think full marks go to the amateur side of things, and whether that is Trent Mann, whether that's Troy Mann developing them in Belleville or not, he's still the guy at the helm. So we always like to rip on the guys at the top when they make mistakes. I think there needs to be the added, I guess, the award or the adulation of saying, hey, congrats on building what you've done on the prospect side of things.
For sure. And I mentioned that, and I totally agree with you. And I think back to Pierre, I mean, I know him well enough. I've had many discussions with him. He's very professional, and he's had some good tutelage under Brian Murray. I mean, he's got the resume, if you will. We've seen some issues. You can make arguments, as you just mentioned, Wally, with regards to some of the pickups. I think that's just salary restriction, and he's working with what he has. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I know. I just, there's some things that I've witnessed off ice that I haven't been a big fan of. And so I kind of hold back a bit on saying, hey, great job in this whole turnaround. I'm not I'm not there saying that he's the one that deserves to have this chance to ride this team into the next phase. But if he gets it done, he gets it done. Obviously, ownership thinks he can get it done. And that really, ultimately, it's their team. They can do what they want with it. And so far.
And that'll be the test. I think to finish this, we can both agree on this point at the very least. You've got all your pieces in place now, right? Yeah. It just comes down to insulating them with some good quality players. And good quality players cost money. And that's what it comes down to.
Speaking of players, the Sens on Wednesday announced that their development camp roster, and I couldn't help but look, who got number 48?
Oh, who did? I didn't even look at the list
yet. There is one guy, and I was like, no, they didn't. Chandler Romeo got number 48. So
what a brutal number.
So he is now a new fan of the show. We will make sure that we follow him closely. Igor Sokolov wearing number 75, which is a weird
okay. Number, yeah. But no, okay. Yeah. You guys know how I feel about 48. I feel bad for him. I mean, it's a no-win. We call that a no-win situation. You know, you're going down when you get that number.
Anyway, I just thought it always makes me chuckle when I think of you. All right. From the future, let's talk about the past. And our guest today on the show, of course, put up some of the most memorable moments in franchise history. He's been around for obviously a long time, played a decade for the Ottawa Senators, and he's part of your early supper club on the road. Joining us in the chat, quenched by Whitewater beer, is veteran goalie Craig Anderson. He's set to join the Buffalo Sabres this season. That'll be his 6th franchise. Reminder, use the Wally Methot coupon code, 15% off your purchase when you shop whitewater.ca. So, Meth, did it take a while for you and Andy to become friends? Let me just put you this way. He seems very stoic and almost on guard a lot unless you get to know him. Did it take a while to figure him out?
Yeah. I mean, and you'll, with interviews and stuff, you get a certain Andy, and then off the ice, you get the goofball, very sarcastic, dry, not afraid to throw a shot at anybody in the room. And we clicked pretty, right away, because when I got there, I'm kind of like that too. And I can be grumpy. Andy can be grumpy. So we were good at being grumpy together on any given time. But Andy was also good at picking me up. Like if you noticed I was having a rough morning, or I was just in a bad mood because I was tired. We played the night before. I'm at the rink. He'd be good at giving me a couple jabs to kind of wake me up a little bit. And of course, you mentioned the early supper club. So Andy and I and whoever else wanted to join the early birds. And when I say early bird, because I don't want people to get the wrong idea, I'm talking like 6 p.m., 6:30. A lot of guys, other players like Eric Carlson and Dion Phaneuf, they'd go at like 8 o'clock. And I'm like, I can't do that. It's just not me. I want to get back to my room and watch a movie. So Andy and I had a really good vibe there when it came to that. And we were on the same page. And we had really, and honest to God, Wally, that translated onto our performances on the ice. We had good chemistry off the ice. So we had really good communication when we were playing together and relaying information. And he was telling me where forwards were and stuff. So having a goalie on your side like that is huge, especially for a defenseman.
He seemed like a big talker on the ice. Like, was he one of the most vocal goalies you played with?
He is the most vocal goaltender I've ever played with, and in a good way. I mean, it wasn't because I played with goalies that would just panic, and scream at you if you were in the wrong position, and you'd almost want to turn around and just, I don't know, I'm not going to say it, but with Andy, it was different. Like he was just smart about it, and he was good at taking responsibility when he knew that he did something wrong or whatever it was, and wasn't trying to find a guy to blame. He was really just very self-aware, and sure of himself. And so that really kind of translates into his game when it was confident chatter to his defenseman. And I know I've said this a lot before, and that's why I'm repeating it. It can't be said enough. It's such a big asset to have on your team.
So here's the one thing about Andy, and we'll get to it later, I guess, is he never got a chance to win a Stanley Cup, or he hasn't yet, going into his 19th season. And we all, I mean, I guess the NHL is littered with players who, if they were just on a better team, would have won a Stanley Cup, I guess. Do you feel like he had the resume, or he was a guy that could get you to a Stanley Cup if he perhaps was surrounded by these great teams that we've seen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we almost did it, right? Yeah. And I think, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, really, we were close, and he's proven time and time again in the past, with a lot of those playoff rounds that everyone had the chance to witness, that he's capable of doing that. And he has a switch, and he's able to elevate his game whenever it's important. Those big games, you knew Andy was going to perform for you. That was never an issue. It was never in question. Earlier on in the year, there's the odd game here and there, like any other player, where you might not get a great performance out of Andy, but I think that goes for any goaltender. But the biggest compliment you can give a player is that he was a big game player, and he was a playoff performer. And I mean, I can't say that enough about Andy.
Yeah, and he was. And the sarcasm, I won't forget, and we can talk about it later. He used to just sometimes scare me in scrums because I never knew how to
you don't know if he's serious.
Yeah, like, are you like just trying to yank my chain, or anyway? We'll get to that later. All right. Sure. Time now for one of our new favorite segments, of course, is called Pearls of Wisdom. It's brought to you by sportsinteraction.com/Wally and Methot and Meth. Don't forget, like, people got to sign up now. The NFL starts tonight. The Cowboys and Bucks, and of course, we all know the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl yet again.
They're the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NFL.
Yeah. I am a Cowboy fan, and it's killing me that there's this futility of late.
And to that point, when I was playing in Texas, when we were down in Dallas, they weren't like, the fans weren't obnoxious. That was a big surprise for me. I mean, I was expecting it to be kind of like Toronto as far as our team's the best, yada, yada, yada. I feel like the most outspoken Dallas Cowboy fans are the people that aren't native to Dallas. They're the people that are scattered throughout North America. You know what I mean? And they're the louder, more vocal ones. But yeah, like they got a good fan base down there. They're very realistic and reserved to a degree.
I've always just, for some reason, liked them. And it goes way back to the Ed Too Tall Jones era. But were you there when they built that practice facility? Have you been there?
So when my wife and I got to Dallas, Jim Nill, the general manager of the Dallas Stars, took us for a drive, and it's north of Dallas in Frisco, where the Rangers practice and where the Dallas Stars practice. We were all kind of in the same area. Their facility is insane. So you drive in, and Jim Nill kind of gave us like a runaround. And you could see Jerry Jones's helicopter planted in the middle of the practice field, like dead center, like no F's given, just that's where I'm going to park my helicopter. And I guess he goes from there to Arlington for games, like in back and forth type of deal. And so that guy's a boss, and their facility is gorgeous. It doesn't even it looks like a huge tech facility, like in Silicon Valley. Like, that's how insane it looks. And the amount of money poured into it, I can only imagine, but those players are treated very well.
It's wild. There's a documentary on Amazon about the year in the life of the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh yeah, I've seen a preview, and they have like a drone shot where the drone kind of takes them through. Yeah.
So good. It's so
really
good.
Cool.
So and we're way off topic, but I covered a couple of NFL practices and whatnot. And I've been to the Jets facility and the Giants and Washington and Baltimore. The Jets had just built this new beautiful building, and we're in it. And I can just remember, like, it's a 5-star setup for dining and all that stuff, but over here is, there's the barber shop, and then over here is like this
crazy.
Shop and that, they've got everything you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, like you can be there all day. It's almost like it's hard to compare it to anything, right? Because it's its own entity, and it's so over the top. Like the money involved in this game, it's and then you go back to an NHL rink, which, by the way, most are very good facilities as well, but you can't even compare. It's a different world.
It's how you can tell how small, and I don't mean that like the NHL is a $4 billion industry, but you can tell how small it is compared to the NFL.
Puts it into perspective.
All right, sorry. Pearls of Wisdom, by the way, brought to you by sportsinteraction.com. Get in, sign up, and get ready to start doing some NFL betting. I will take the Dallas Cowboys tonight, if I haven't made that clear. I don't care about Tom Brady, okay? By the way, Tom Brady signed jersey up for auction at our golf tournament coming up on Friday. Okay.
I didn't even, what?
Yeah.
Really?
Tom Brady Bucks jersey from last year, from his
MVP,
like his Super Bowl season. All right.
Wow.
Here's what John Perlberg has dug up for us today. Craig's just going to shake his head at our way off topic here. Andy holds records for his team records in his last 4 franchises. So here they are. So with Florida, he's got 53 saves. That's the most saves in a shutout by a Florida Panther goaltender. Colorado, 71. That's the most games played in a single season by a goalie. 71 games, Meth. Yeah. It's a ridiculous number. Wow. In Ottawa, he holds nearly every record, but let's go 202. That's the most career victories by an Ottawa Senator goaltender. And of course, in Washington, he's not going to probably enjoy this one as much. 39 years, 359 days. That is the oldest goalie to win a playoff game. So, by the way, I think he is now he's in the top 5 at least of oldest players in the league. And I know he's the oldest starting or the oldest goalie, but what a career he's had. And you look over and see all the stuff that he's done in his career. And as we're going to the pre-scout now, and it's brought to you by Bonisher Excavating Inc., BEI, helping to shape the Ottawa Valley. Visit BonisherExcavating.com. Just take a look at this. Like 19th NHL season this year. Spent 10 years in Ottawa, holding almost every goaltending record except just one, which is shutout, still held by Patrick Lalime. Signed with Buffalo. That's his 6th NHL team. 652 games, 291 career wins. That's the 5th most among active goaltenders in the National Hockey League. And of course, he won the 2017 Masterton Trophy. Like for a guy that started 0-11, Greg Anderson's had a phenomenal run as a goaltender.
Yeah, I think any goaltender would take that career in a heartbeat if they had the option. So good for Andy. Not surprised. Fantastic human, good family. I'm happy for him.
And we'll get into it even in the interview coming up, just about, the start that he had and how he was on waivers and almost didn't make it through to the NHL. Like he didn't come in as a heralded goaltender. Don't forget, he went back into the draft, all kinds of things. So for him to get to 19 years in the National Hockey League shows perseverance and a will to win. And you know what it shows though? That he can actually flat out play. So there are players in the National Hockey League or even in any sport, right? That they just show up to training camp or they just show up to the ice and they can just play. Like I hate those guys because they don't have, it looks like they don't do any work. Like you could go in and talk to Andy in the middle of the day and you wouldn't know that he's the starting goaltender for tonight's game. It could be the biggest game of the year, right? Like he was just always a normal guy.
Yeah. He's a normal dude, and not your typical player either. I mean, he builds computers and virtual reality setups in his basement. I know he has this crazy 3-screen race simulator that he has, and it's an interactive one that like moves with this, and he builds these things like so, and he collects vehicles. He's got some really nice cars. He's a different bird, and I mean that in a very good way. Yeah,
always painted a Corvette on his goalie masks.
There you go.
So when we return, it's Andy with a cameo appearance from his wife Nicole in the Whitewater Chat. You're watching the Wally Methot Show, powered by Barhaven Ford. All right, welcome back to the show, and welcome to the show, the greatest goaltender in Ottawa Senator history, Craig Anderson. How are you during this great summer?
Doing all right. It's real hot down here in South Florida, and just kind of hanging out, doing the dad stuff.
So when do you start to get prepared to get back into the NHL season and head to Buffalo?
I started training maybe a month ago. Started a lot sooner than I did last year. That's a good step in the right direction. But yeah, planning on getting up there sometime mid-September. Try to get on the ice maybe a week or two in September down here in Florida.
Andy, is that you're starting up early with your training? Is that just being an old man at this point and trying to preserve anything left in the body?
I think time off is good for the old body. No, last year I didn't do anything since March last year and didn't really start up until October. November, just kind of like, all right, maybe something will happen. And then, so I really wasn't as prepared as I am now that, I got a good 8 weeks of training to kind of get ready for the season. It's a lot, a lot more efficient.
Yeah. And I think, because I know you're down there in South Florida, I'm incredibly jealous, by the way, but I remember Yager always was quoted as saying that being an older player in the league, obviously exceptionally older than you are right now. I think he was in his mid-40s at this point, but he would talk about how the humidity in Florida was just just felt good on his bones. It gave him more longevity. Is that the key? Is that why you're still down there?
Not sure. We're here because the kids go to school here and they got travel baseball and flag football and they do all that stuff down here. But yeah, it's for about 8-9 months a year. It's perfect weather down here. I just haven't experienced it yet because I'm always up north.
When did you see the Buffalo thing transpiring? Like, did this come out of left field for you?
Yeah, more or less. We were not expecting anything to happen. Definitely on the opening day of the transactions there. So with free agency, but, kind of in the morning was, hey, like, you got any interest in maybe, working with a young guy? I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like, all right. And then by dinner time, it was like, all right, yes or no, are you in or out? I'm like, all right, we're in. So yeah, a matter of 6 hours, it was like, think about it to fully commit. There wasn't even like time to like sleep on it. It was just like, hey, we talked about it over the afternoon, and my wife was pretty supportive, and then the agent kind of committed and was like, hey, by the way, you're playing. I was like, all right, we'll take it.
And have you gone up there yet, Andy, to like look for a place at all, or have you just been kind of floating online?
No, we've been online a little bit and just reached out to some of the team service guy to start work in touch with a realtor. I got a buddy that does some race car stuff there that lives in Buffalo. He does some race car stuff in Ottawa. So he lives there. He's kind of helping me with some of the location of where to be, where not to be, where the restaurants are, whatnot. But last year I lived 6 months in a Marriott, so I got some good points. Maybe use some of those for the first month when we're up there.
Is it because it's a Marriott right next door? It's like you can stay right at the rink.
That it is. I got a lot of points to use.
Yeah. Perfect. How much different, I guess, was it this year compared? Like, did you think you were going to end up getting a deal last year? And did you go into this free agency maybe planning to retire, or was that even on your mind?
It was kind of up in the air. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I didn't want to let the pandemic kind of end the career. And so last year, just the way the timing worked of everything, Lundqvist, going through his surgery and opened up a spot, and it just kind of the way it kind of worked out was kind of meant to be. But I wasn't forcing the issue last year. We weren't like calling everybody going, I need a job. It just kind of fell in place. And then, similar to this year, like it was one of those things where I was not expecting it either way. Could have been, could have been happily retired or, happy playing either way. So it's just kind of the way things are supposed to happen. Fate's kind of let fate do its thing, and, go out there and ride the wave.
Yeah. And we're all pumped for you, Andy. That's awesome. How's the body feeling otherwise? I know I can speak from experience. Getting a little older, it takes a little longer to get it ready for games and all that. So are you skating lots right now in the summertime? What's your kind of regimen looking like, and how's the body feeling?
Probably from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. trying to get out of bed. That's kind of that early morning stiffness that kind of, as you get older, everybody deals with. But once we get to the gym and get moving, that first like 10 minutes on the bike at the gym, and then everything kind of falls into place. So I think that's kind of was the key last year too, is get to the rink, get that 10-15 minute bike ride in, just get everything moving, and then see the staff. I think Dom and Jerry always hammered that, go warm up before you hit the table. And, so many guys just rather get the work done before they warm up. And you can definitely, as you get older, you can definitely notice a difference being mobile and moving around. And so, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's just, you get in a routine and you figure out what works and what doesn't, and you stick to it.
So are you training with a bunch of players down there? And are you like, and again, I know I'm hammering home these questions about fitness only because I'm so curious, like, has your diet changed? What's changed to get you that extra little longevity? Do you have anybody working with you?
So yeah, I'm going daily to it's actually a CrossFit gym, but I'm working with a guy that's just from South Africa. He's got PT, AT, he's got kind of all of his credentials from South Africa. He was a rugby guy, and now they do all CrossFit over there. But he and I are pretty much on a daily maintenance program as far as A, getting stronger, B, getting leaner, but C, also working on flexibility and getting the body in line. So it's actually been a great fit. Trying to stay off the ice, as you get older, you need a lot more maintenance as far as just before you get on the ice. So without having the Doms and the Jerrys of the world, in your back pocket, paying them on a daily basis, it's tough to get that service. So try to stay off the ice as best you can so you don't hurt yourself. But do skate a couple days once a week. Try to get out there with the beer league, play as a skater, just trying to get the cardio going. Boys have fun with that.
You've always done that, right? And I feel like it's a very common thing for goaltenders. Just you almost, well, first of all, nobody wants to play goalie in a beer league game, right? Because there's just 2-on-0s and breakaways the whole time. So is that your thing now? You just play as a player as much as you can, and you get a little conditioning out of it?
Yeah, so that's like the skating conditioning. Otherwise, in the gym, it's all it's the bike rides and the fitness that way. But I think maybe a week or two. I think the first 2 weeks in September before I head up there, we'll hammer in. I think working out a deal to get a goalie coach down here and get some ice to run through some just basic fundamental movement drills without trying to hurt yourself. It's just a matter of getting through the cardiovascular of actually playing goalie. It can be that first week or so can be tough, and I found that out real quick because last year, without skating, just kind of doing the off ice, getting into Washington, taking a 7-day quarantine, and then trying to jump on the ice was definitely a learning curve experience that was it was pretty fun. Needless to say, the training staff got their work in.
Oh, I believe it.
Just back to the beer league for a sec. Do you play any defense to help out your goalie?
Most time, a lot of shot blocks. I got the biggest shin pads you'll ever see.
That's awesome.
And do you score?
I played last night. I had 4 assists. A lot of pass off pads.
Nice.
It's not a very good league. Let me tell you that. It's a tough league.
They don't have elite hockey down there in South Florida?
No. To say the least, it's a bunch of like 40-year-old guys that played maybe club 20 years ago in college.
Yeah. Oh, well, at least you're out.
And do you know,
I'm having a good time.
Sometimes there's guys that want take serious beer league, right? And so then if they see an NHL guy and they end up wanting to fight him halfway through. Did anybody try to take runs at you?
No, I'm usually chirping myself saying, "Hey, look out, goalie coming through." I stay out of the corners. I try to go to the blue paint, and that kind of stuff. But it's just like I said, it's pretty fun. Guys are pretty relaxed about it. Some of the teammates get into it and they kind of take it serious. But if there's a battle in the corner, I'll stay out. I just try to play as safe as I can. And just like I said, it's more or less just to skate up and down the ice and have a good time and maybe throw in a celebration every once in a while.
Right on.
What were you told going into Washington, and did you expect to play obviously more than you did?
Obviously having a conversation with the general manager is a lot different than having the conversation with the coaching staff. I think from the general manager standpoint, it was one of those things where, you got a veteran guy to work with the young guys. We know you can play if called upon. And then when you have a conversation with the coach, it's like, hey, everything's earned, come out here, fight for your spot. And, it's kind of like one of those things where, you got to kind of feel both things out. And again, it was one of those things where back-to-backs, I don't think anybody that last year played back-to-back. But just so happened that the month that Samsonov was out, we didn't have any back-to-backs. So, Vanacek got to play 18 in a row there. Where, maybe was kind of expecting to get a game here and there, but there was no back-to-back. So I was totally understandable. And I kind of got where they were coming from. So at the end of the day, I wasn't upset, and I was just kind of there to help VTech as best I could and be a good support model.
So on that note, then what's going to be the approach? I'm sure you've had multiple conversations with guys from Buffalo. What's the expectation level out of you then, as far as games go and the number 1-2 combination?
Right now, there was nothing really set in stone. And I think that's kind of what I learned 20 years ago when I first entered pro hockey was everything is earned. You show up, you might be guaranteed, quote unquote, the starting job or the backup job. But if you don't go in there and perform, you got a short leash. They'll find someone else, or they'll find, a different situation that would be best for the team. So right now it's more or less, hey, we know what you can do. We know you're capable. It's just a matter of now going out and myself, having the pride to do it on a daily basis again.
6th winningest U.S. born goaltender. You are 9 wins away from 300. What does that number mean to you?
It's a personal goal. I think I've kind of had that number in my head since I played with Vokun. When I played with him in 07, 08, and then watched where his career ended. He ended up playing 700 games, 300 wins. And it was kind of like one of those things where, hey, it's a great accomplishment from him, and I know him, and he lives in the same neighborhood. And I just kind of felt like, hey, if I can get to that number also, it'd be kind of a cool thing.
Do you think goaltenders should get recognized? One of the things is we make a big deal about 1,000 games for a player, but in goaltending, if you don't play the game, you don't get recognized for even being there. So I would think if you double the number of games you played, you're at, 1,200, 1,300 or something dressed. And maybe I'm completely wrong in that number, somewhere in there. But do you guys feel that you should get perhaps recognized a little bit more than the 500 game mark, I think?
It's hard to say. I mean, I remember a year ago or 2 years ago, kind of trying to figure out what the percentage of players that played got to 1,000, and whatever that number is, it's like 1% or whatever it ends up being. To get that equal percentage in goaltenders, when I was kind of doing it in my head or pen and paper back in the day, was somewhere around that 650 mark or 630 something mark. So if you took the percentage and then figured out if there's 1,000 goalies played, get that percentage of top 50 goalies, whatever it might be, the percentage was that in order to get in that top percentage wise was like 600 and some games. Wow. So it's hard. It's like I said, it's hard to say because, the 500 mark is what's used. There's still not that many that get to 500. So, I mean, that's still a pretty good accomplishment, but I'm not sure what the percentages that get the 300 wins either. I think that might be a big one as far as throughout the league.
I know that I want to say it's in the 40s or 50. It's not a huge number ever get to 300 wins. And if you're looking at US born goalies, you'd be just the sixth. Like, that's a phenomenal feat for a guy that wasn't sure you were going to last in the NHL, I think, when you first started, right? And you've openly talked about the Chicago issues and having to learn to, I guess, grow up, if you will. You went on waivers in like 3 days. You played on 3 different teams, ended up back in Chicago. I shouldn't say 3 days. It was over like a 2-week period, and you went to St. Louis and Boston. Like, when you look back at that now, you've got to be impressed of where you've gotten to. And I know it's tough to try and pat yourself on the back, but that's a huge accomplishment for a guy back in the draft twice and ended up with the struggles you had in Chicago early on.
Yeah. I mean, I think from day one, I think, when you get drafted, everybody has some sort of ego when they get drafted. Obviously being drafted is kind of a big deal, this, that, and the other. And the guys that kind of figure it out sooner than later are the ones that have, longevity or have the success. And it took me, a couple fall downs, a couple steps backwards to kind of get to where I was comfortable in my own skin and comfortable around the guys and kind of feel everybody out. So, I went into my first year pro of being, a little arrogant and this, that, and the other, and thought I was better than this guy and better than that. And it kind of was an eye opener and a humbling moment, to say the least. So then, like I said, through waivers, again, every part of my career, there was humbling moments, and there's certain points in your career where you look back and said, I wish I could have done things different. But as a good professional, or as a guy that really wants to kind of keep moving forward, is not what happens to you. Like, I had a great goalie coach that said, hey, it's not what happens to you. It's not if they score, it's when they score. What are you going to do next? Right? If you make a big save, what are you going to do next? Right? So go through waivers. Okay. What's your next step? Oh, you get yanked, you get sent to the minors. What's your next step? You got 2 choices. You can be a pout. You can pout about it and complain, and then complain to your teammates, complain to your coaching staff, complain to your agent, or you can say, hey, you know what? I got to learn from this and I got to be better. And these are the areas I can improve, and work your way back. And that's kind of, the stepping stones that I had to go through. And I went through it numerous times in my career. And, the nice thing about having a long-term contract is you can make some mistakes and not get punished for it like you can when you're on short-term deals.
Which goalie coach did you give the most gray hairs to?
All of them.
That's not true. Pierre Grew speaks very highly of you. So I'm thinking like Rick Walmsley was probably a guy that you frustrated to no end.
I don't know. Me and Walmer got along pretty good. I mean, I think when you were the starting goalie with Walmer, I think we got along great. I think there's a lot of controversy with Walmer and a couple guys just based because they were the backup and they weren't playing a whole lot. So Walmer felt it was his job to make sure that he was in game shape, and he would kill you in practice. And, you can ask Meth. Nobody likes the guy that sticks around and bag skates you at the end of practice.
That's like especially not when it's a guy like Walmer that pounds 30 cheeseburgers a day.
Wow.
That's aggressive. That's aggressive.
Did you ever see that guy walk around? Anyway, I'm not going to put you on the spot. I had my issues with him as well, but I had a bad back, and I remember him giving it to me. He was giving it to me in Boston. And we were doing like a little bagger after practice, and the team was desperate to get me back in the lineup. And I couldn't move. Like, I had the worst nerve pain. And he said, I forget what he said to me, but I almost took a swing at him. I almost did, but I ended up just catching myself and going off the ice. And I think he said something to the guy that I was playing. I think it was Smitty. and he made a pretty bold comment to Smitty about me because I went off. And anyway, long story short, you guys are bringing up Wammer right now. It's bringing back some very fond memories.
It seemed fun.
No, like I said, when you're the starting goalie, Wammer was great. Like, it was all about pump up video and like, hey, you're doing this great, etc. But like I said, when you weren't playing, he hammered you, whether it was, bag skates or just, what can you do better? And, he was just a good guy. Like I said, I got along with him pretty good. And there was, there were certain times where, yeah, you did get mad at him, but it was usually when you weren't playing and you just wanted to make sure that you were, he had your best interest at heart. I felt sometimes kind of came off the wrong way as there's lots of stories with other goalies that bought him all the time. So, but PG and I, we had a good relationship. He got me as far as, my mental and verbal abuse towards him. He knew how to deal with it. He knew how to deal with it.
And he was such a good guy, eh? Like, he was such a nice, he's such a good person. Like, anyway, I just feel like people need to understand this before you continue talking about him.
Yeah, no, he was great. Like, like I said, it was one of those things where I always had, whether it was a comment or something, and he just kind of laughed it off and said, all right, like, get everything out. You keep chirping. And then when you're done, let's get to work, and like, we ended up doing the work anyways. It's just my mental battle with him was just like, I got to say something. I got to chirp him. I got to make fun of the drill or do something.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, we'll still end up doing the drill just the way he wants, and I'll just get through it. And it's like I said, he and I just kind of got along really good that way. And he understood me, and that's why he and I got along so well.
And for people that don't know you who are listening to this, they don't know the Craig Anderson he looked very stoic and whatever, but you have a good sense of humor. It's just dry and sarcastic like crazy.
Oh,
and it translates to everybody. Like, I can remember walking into scrums and I'd have to just take this verbal beating from you for about 30 seconds and then we can get on with the questions. But yeah, like, because I never wanted to push back too much because we're in a scrum and cameras are recording and you don't want to say a whole lot. But I can just remember every once in a while, I'd be like, you just take shots at me to no end.
Yeah, I mean, that's my personality, and like I said, I think, you can rub teammates the wrong way if you don't like I said, I've learned as I go, and who you can push and who you can't, and what you can say. And sometimes I say, I mean, even last year, I remember getting into it with a guy, and I said something that I thought was kind of funny, and he took it completely the wrong way, and we didn't talk for 3 days until I actually realized, hey, what's going on? You're not talking to me, and then I had to really go through the process of, all right, I'm sorry I said that. That's not what I meant. And let's get past this. So, I mean, like I said, it happens, even like I said, to this day, it still happens to people. And, like I said, I think I sometimes get a bad rep that way, but again, it's nothing personal towards anybody. It's just kind of who I am and my sense of humor. And again, it's almost like I do it with a smile. You know what? My son does it to me all the time, and it frustrates me to no end. So I could understand.
No, but in fairness to Andy, though, because I was close with Andy when we played together. We're obviously a really good friend of mine, and I never saw that. Like you say, well, I've got this rep. I don't think you ever had a bad rep about any of that. I think just some guys aren't really smart enough to catch on to the sarcasm, so they'll take offense to it, and then you have to literally hold their hand and guide them through it and explain to them, listen, it's not personal. It's okay. And Andy's just being Andy, and that's how he is. Speaking of which, Andy, do you still do the stand-up style in practice? I think a lot of fans that are watching here don't understand that Craig Anderson does the old Billy Ranford kick saves in practice, and it drives coaches and goal scorers absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, that was being on the taxi squad last year. We did a lot of games and just a lot of. So I jump on the ice with the D shooting pretty much at the end of every practice, right before taxi squad skates. So you'd be out there for the last 10, 15 minutes of practice for when the forwards split up with the D. Yeah. So I jump in and, Dilly there in Wash, he just got traded to Winnipeg, but he would die laughing every single day just based on my goalie movements. And it's just, it kind of brings a smile on my face. It's something just, you can get these guys to smile. Now, there's obviously certain guys you can't do that with, and then other guys, I try to play as legit as you can, but then sometimes you're just like, screw it, I'm just gonna mess around with them. And last year was kind of a good learning curve for me to kind of get used to all right, these guys, with Oshie and Backstrom and Ovi and some of these guys, you got to play a certain way. And what I really noticed was when you watched VTech practice and when I watched Samsonov practice, and then I watched, kind of diagnose my own practice habits. And it's all right, you watch one guy who's not, Vitek was a guy that was balls to the wall, butterfly in every shot, and you're like, dude, you gotta chill out. You know, you gotta slow down a little bit. You're gonna tire yourself out. You're burning. He was losing like 10, 12 pounds in practice. You're like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
So like I ended up being the third goalie out there for practice a lot just to give him a break because he was going 100% on every shot, where Samsonov was a lot more like me, like, all right, how can I make a more efficient save? How's this play? How can I play it more efficient? So like there was kind of one of those things where I've been through it enough where I know I can't be stand up and not try every shot. There's got to be a good balance, right? And that's kind of one of the things that I was trying to work with those guys is find a balance. Like, so take 10 shots super hard, like it's a game situation, take 3 or 4, work on something else where you're maybe deep in your net trying to read the shot, or maybe just working on angles. Yeah. And, so that's, again, it's one of those things where you kind of learn as you go, and you kind of get the temperature of each guy and who you can do it to and who you can't. And usually the goal scorers, you got to play legit, but the guys that don't score a whole lot think it's funny when you kind of mess around with them.
So in other words, when Mark Methot would come down, you'd mail it in and do a kick save, demoralize me. And then when Erik Karlsson or Mark Stone would come down, you would try very hard. And you're still basically instilling that philosophy to this day.
If you put it that way, that sounds horrible.
It's okay. It's all good, man.
I liked you enough where I knew I could get away with it.
No, it was funny. But I think that was what I was trying to get at, though. You're really good at it. That's the scary part. Like you would like leave that stick side wide open, and then a paddle would come by and just swat it away like nothing. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that guys like myself at least appreciate it. I would die laughing. Right. So keep doing it.
Yeah, no, like I said, there'd be certain drills like de-shooting, like there'd be half the drill I do legit, and then I'd take 10 shots and try to do the paddle thing. And like I said, it wasn't like a full time. So like in Ottawa, sometimes it was like a full practice of just like kick out, kick save. But I've kind of managed it better and done a little bit better job of because I wasn't playing a whole lot. So you have to play somewhat legit and try to get in that game shape and that game reps. But for sure. Again, it was one of those things where, you just, like I said, you feel the temperature of everything and you kind of go from there.
Did then Oshie or Ovechkin or Backstrom, anybody say anything to you about it? Like, dude, I need you to stop the puck the real way for me.
No, not really. Like I said, everyone had pretty light. It was pretty light atmosphere last year. Everyone was really good about it. Again, the other argument is that, when you have a conversation with the goalie coach, about standing up and whatnot, there's lots of situations in the game where I do stand up. So the argument is, hey, like that's his read. That's how he makes the save in the game. We're not going to force him something else in practice just to make the forwards feel good. I mean, it's kind of a cat and mouse, right? So they'll start figuring me out. I'll figure them out. I'll make adjustments, see if they can make the adjustment. And I think I'd like to think that I make people better, but a lot of people think that I, make them worse because they can't score.
Last topic before we move on to Ottawa, and that's you getting into the playoffs. So I want to know what that first game was like when you go in game 1, and then you get the start in game 2 only to lose in overtime. But I think you made 48 saves that game. Was this, I guess, what was the adrenaline like for you in that moment?
I think when I kind of saw Vitek go down, I was like, oh, he's down. He's just kind of maybe upset about the goal, but then it ended up like prolonging into like, a full 3-minute affair where he's still laying on the ice. And I'm like, oh, I guess I got to get moving here. So I think you didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it. And that's sometimes the best thing for a player is getting thrown in. You didn't have all day or the day before to start thinking about it and kind of psych yourself out. That was just, hey, throw in and stay in the moment, and you kind of stay that way. And it was an exciting game. I thought, a lot of things went right for us. I think I had some good bounces here and there, but at the end of the day, as Meth knows, like there's so much pre-scout that goes into playoff that they probably pre-scouted the heck out of Vitek and nothing out of me. So that first game, they're trying to figure out, what's his weakness, where we got to shoot, and kind of get the breakdown. The second game, I think, and as the series goes on, the teams really get enough video and they really do the breakdown of kind of the weaknesses and strengths.
Yeah.
But were you disappointed though you didn't get to go in for game 3, knowing that how well you would play? You still played well in game 2 despite the loss.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where I was battling some stiffness in the back, and Samsonov was coming back and he was healthy, and it was kind of a decision there at that point when we go into Boston was that you know what, Sammy's been the guy all year. He's back now. He's healthy. Let's give him a shot. And if you don't like the result, hey, I'll be ready to go for game 4. So like, it was just more or less a day of rest and recovery to see, how I would respond. And I was 100% after that full day off. And then Samsonov played well enough where they felt that they wanted to ride him. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's, as a player, you don't request what you want to do. You earn what you get, and then you respect the coach's decision. You're ready for whatever the coach decides. You can't make demands at this level, and at any level for that matter in pro sports.
I could go on all day about the whole Washington thing, but I want to get on to Ottawa. And so do you have, I think it's January 22nd scheduled or circled on the calendar. I think that's the first time you come back to Ottawa.
No, I haven't even looked at the schedule, to be honest with you.
Well, thanks for your help. Are you anxious or excited to get a chance? Perhaps I would hope that you're going to be in that game that day.
I mean, you can only, I can make the demand, I guess, since we just talked about demanding playing time. I think, coaches are human. They kind of understand the human aspect of things, and that, that's kind of an exciting, event for myself to kind of get back there and play, hopefully in front of the fans that hopefully the building be opened up for them. But, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be an emotional day, no different than any other emotional day that I've had there. The fans, obviously, I was there a long time, and they were great to me, and I don't think I could repay them, tenfold for what they've done for me and my family.
I don't know like how much you pay attention to social media. I know you're not on it a lot. There has been a lot of people talking about they want to have an opportunity to say a proper goodbye to Craig Anderson after 10 years in Ottawa. Have you noticed any of that? And I guess, what does it mean to you? Because it's tough when you're, I think, in it at the time to understand how much perhaps you are appreciated as a player, because you don't, I guess, take a lot of time to understand it at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like I said, I haven't followed much. We're in South Florida. We don't get a whole lot of Canadian news. And, as far as social media, it's not my strong point. But at the end of the day, I think, fans are, they're great, and they're, they want to express their, thanks and gratitude. I think that's awesome. And, again, it's one of those moments where I've seen it on the other side, where guys come back and they get the standing ovation, and, they go for a little twirl and stick their hand in the air. So, at the end of the day, that's awesome, and for me to experience it, I think it'd be great. And, like I said, it's, I don't know. You got me rambling now, so I really don't have much else to say.
I'm still waiting for you to use the term "put our work boots on," because that's something you used to say in every clip every time I talk to you at post game. I'll get back to those cliches in a sec. The question, I guess, are you disappointed in the way it ended in Ottawa? And it just didn't seem like you got a chance to say goodbye or whatever. They were like, Ottawa was just done with you as a management. Is that fair?
I wouldn't. It's the nature of the business, right? Your contract ends, and they can either choose to renew you or not, and it doesn't matter what the fans think. I think it comes down to a business choice at that point, and it's no different than breaking up with a girlfriend or whatever. It's never pleasant, right? Like, someone doesn't want you anymore. It's not a pleasant feeling, right? And I think Meth can attest to going through that with Ottawa, or any other team for that matter. Although Ottawa did want to keep you, I guess, in that conversation, but just the way the expansion draft worked out, it didn't work out for you. But, I think at the end of the day, you understand it and you move on, and you realize that it's nothing personal, and it's just it's a business and professional position that they need to take.
Yep.
So how would you assess your 10 years in Ottawa? There was, I think when you arrived in Ottawa out of Colorado and trade for Brian Elliott on trade deadline day, is that they didn't know what they had in you coming to Ottawa, and they needed to find out, because they'd heard that perhaps you were hard to get along with, or they weren't sure about playing habits or whatnot. Did you know that coming in, that you were, I guess, needing to prove yourself that first season?
I think every time you step on the ice, you need to prove yourself. And I think from that point, it's a fresh start. You get a fresh, a fresh first impression. And, so, like I said, we had this conversation earlier about, my dry humor and rubbing people the wrong way. And it's not intentional. It's me being clueless, for one, on practice habits and not getting the temperature of kind of situation and be like, oh, guys are really pissed. Maybe I should do something different, as opposed to, so like I said, it's one of those things where, I had to learn, and I'm still learning, and there was times in Ottawa where I pissed off a lot of people, I'm sure, from player standpoint of practice habits. And, again, it's one of those things where if you're playing well and you're stealing games, no one cares. But as soon as things start going sideways and you're not the hardest working guy there and you're not the best player, guys get pissed off, and then that kind of snowballs, and then you get the rep on it. So, as far as proving myself, again, I try to do that every day. Especially in the games, you got to prove it every day, but it starts with practice habits. And that's one of the things that I've learned over the years, is how to manage your practice habits and go from there. But yeah.
You played for 6 different coaches in Ottawa: Corey Clouston, Paul McLean, Dave Cameron, Guy Boucher, Mark Crawford, DJ Smith. Who was your favorite?
All of them.
You're not playing for them anymore. You don't have to say that.
I never had an issue with anyone. I don't think. I really liked playing with Paul McLean. I think he was very fair to me and fair to my family, and he was always there when I needed him. And he was the guy that drove me to the hospital when I decided to cut my fingers off. So he holds a special place in my heart, and his family was very good to Nicole and us. So I mean, I would say he was probably my favorite, but I won't give you a least favorite. But I didn't really have any least favorite. Like I said, it was one of those things where the head coach, I was always interacting with the goalie coach, so the head coach mostly left us alone, and we did our thing. And I think the players have more interaction with the head coach or the assistants, that they may or may not like them, whereas the goalie coach, I had 2 there, so that's the way I look at it.
Which player did you want to fight the most in practice? And I only say that because I know there are certain players that like to go high on you in practice, and I can think of one in particular, and I'm going to wait and see if you say his name. But is there guys that you hated to see in practice come down the wing because they were always trying to go at your head?
Well, there's just one guy, but there's no chance I could beat him up.
Is it Zach?
Oh,
Smith?
Was it Neeler or Smitty?
There's both of them, but yeah, most.
I was genuinely curious. I was sitting on that question too. I'm like, I wonder who he's going to say.
No, but actually, neither was pretty respectful. Smitty just had no control, and he shot so hard.
Yeah, he did.
You're
right.
Smitty he was, neither was always the guy that came super close. Smitty was just the guy that had one speed, and it was as hard as he could. And not that I got hit a whole lot up high, but it was one of those things where when those guys were shooting, you couldn't full butterfly because they had no idea where it was going. It was going somewhere near where the glass is. And they get mad when you didn't play them legit. Yet it's just, they were the guys where you had to play legit, but you really couldn't because you knew you'd get hurt if they hit you.
Well, and I feel like Neeler would celebrate too after his goals, right? Like Smitty would be a little more professional about it, but Neeler would put his arms up and scream and yell, wouldn't he? Like he'd do that occasionally, at least. That would drive you crazy, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, Neeler was good. At least Neeler you could talk to. Smitty would just snap. But Neeler you could at least talk to, and like I said, Neeler and I, well, obviously, Meth, it was me, Meth, and Neeler pretty much every early team dinner or dinner on the road. So I feel like the 3 of us could really kind of like throw each other under the bus and still like chirp each other and still kind of be kosher. Whereas with Smitty, it was like, it was an on and off switch with Smitty. You either got him when he was super pissed, or you got him and it was like, okay, are you serious? Or like, I think the best was when Smitty snapped when his clothes ended up in the your clothes. Was it your clothes ended up in the freezer, or was it Smitty's?
No, it was Smitty, because he burned Neeler's hat with a blowtorch. Remember? It was Neeler's favorite gong show. I know we've actually told this story on here before, probably twice, between Neeler coming on and Smitty, but it was so funny. But you're right.
Yeah.
And then Neeler went after Smitty, threw all his clothes in the freezer, and it shrunk and ruined his clothes. Smitty was pissed. Anyway, those are good times.
Did you do any pranks?
No, I tried to stay out of everybody's way.
Me too.
Yeah, I didn't want to, you know what? You didn't want to piss off Smitty or Nealer because you knew you were going to get it tenfold.
Yes, correct.
So
go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. Like you didn't want to mess with those two guys. Nealer would just take it to another level. Like, did you guys talk about the old fish in the old backseat?
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Yeah, and Patrick Virkoch's backseat.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, Nealer couldn't keep it to like simple, like, oh, I'm just gonna like whatever. I'm gonna put water in your boot or something. It was like full on.
Yeah.
We're taking your car, we're taking the wheels off, putting it on blocks. Like it was just, he took it to a whole nother level on every single time.
So imagine someone pulling a prank on you, like something very harmless in a workspace. And then that guy going out of his way to go to a grocery store. Like it's not like there was a piece of salmon floating around in the room that you could just grab. Like he had to actively go out of his way, go to Farm Boy or whatever grocery store it was, grab the fish, and then put it into Patty's vehicle that was presumably locked. So he would have had to have grabbed his keys. It's just classic Chris Neil. And I think that's what made him so likable. Because if you were on the outside and you weren't the one screwing around with him, it was hilarious.
Yeah, like I said, it was almost comical to the point, like, all right, you almost waiting to see what Nealer would do. And that was, I mean, but it kept the room light. Like it was honestly like without him being there, that last, was it 1 year or 2 years that I was there without him? It was such a different room and different vibe that you just kind of get, I mean, not that it was good or bad. It was just a different vibe, for what Nealer kind of brought to the room and to the ice.
Yeah.
I have lots of questions about Ottawa. Question about Robin Lehner and Ben Bishop when you guys were going through that, and that was the shortened year, I think the lockout year, 2012-13, and you had 3 strong goaltenders. Was it a weird scenario watching that all play out until ultimately Ben Bishop is traded?
Honestly, we wouldn't even have gotten a Ben Bishop if I didn't cut myself.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of my own doing. But at the end of the day, I think, when you got 3 guys, you're giving the team a great opportunity to kind of make a move or do something with it. But I mean, going into that season, I know my agent was freaking out because I did nothing for 4 months. Although we did go to Northwest Territories, which was awesome.
Yes.
But Robin Lehner and Bishop were playing in the American League that year for the shortened season. So like, it was one of those things where you got to figure it out. So it was the year before that I don't remember. Whatever it was, Bishop was already playing in the system, so it must have been the year before we got him.
Because you traded for him from St. Louis.
The year before. The year before.
Okay.
Because he was in the minors with Leonard in Binghamton. So it was kind of one of those things where it was like, hey, like, guy had to get mentally prepared and ready, and there wasn't a whole lot of. It was a shortened season. You got thrown in there at training camp. Training was short and very little preseason games. But no, it was a good. Like I said, it was a good kind of combination. Robin was still young and learning. Bish was kind of starting to feel his stride. So at the end of to be honest with you, I kind of thought that maybe I was going to be the odd man out when I kind of came back, but it didn't happen that way, and I was kind of thankful for that.
You've played with lots of different goaltenders, with Leonard and Bishop, a couple, Ed Belfour, Corey Crawford, Nick Happy-Bulin, Peter Budaj. Of all the goalies you play with, which is a huge number, is there anyone that really stands out as being odd or different, or I don't know, that you got along with the most? Like, I just want to know about these different goaltenders you played with. Some of them are in the National Hockey Hall of Fame, or in the Hockey Hall of Fame, I should say.
Playing with Eddie was like my first surreal experience with like a guy I grew up watching. Like I played with Javi Bulin, but like, I wasn't like a follower of his as a kid. Like the guy that I followed as a kid was Chicago, right? So you had Belfour there, and playing alongside him, it was kind of a neat because I saw his preparation level and kind of what he did at his level and how he was doing it at 42 or 43 years old in Florida. His routine, his habits of diet, etc. It was kind of cool to see. I really enjoyed playing with Jocelyn Thibault. Like that was my first memory as, first couple of years pro. And then he was the goalie coach in Colorado the 1 year. So that kind of relationship was cool, and that was exciting. And that was back when you had to have a certain amount of games to not have a roommate, right? So I roomed with Jocelyn Thibault like my first 2 years of being called up. So that was just awesome, cool experience, surreal. A guy that's you're rooming with the starting goaltender, and you're just like almost like a fan. And I guess my best memory of Ed Belfour, I'll kind of throw this in here. We were training camp in Florida, and for whatever reason during training camp, they had all the vets paired up, and Ed Belfour was paired up with a player. I think it was Kendall McCardle, and Kendall got up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and ended up crawling into the wrong bed with Eddie Belfour by accident. Eddie's kicked him out. So like you're half asleep, like you got two double beds there in the hotel, and you go to the bathroom, you come back, and he crawled into the wrong bed. It's just like you got a 43-year-old guy and a 20-year-old kid. That's like, man, that's just something. This isn't right now. Obviously, we all get our own rooms and stuff, but it's just kind of the old way things used to be.
And how many games was that, Andy? It was like 800, I think, that you had to have played, right? Which was an impossible number for the most part.
It was 800. It was 10 years, and like. It might have been 600 and 10 years.
Okay.
Like it couldn't be either. It couldn't be like 600. You get it. It had to be 10 years and 600 for you to get your own room.
Wow.
Or you could spend the $8,000 or whatever and give the team
That's
money to have your own room.
I did that in Columbus.
Of course you did.
I was a prima donna with my sleep. Yeah. Anyway.
Do you miss roommates?
I had a couple good ones, and when you get paired up with a guy you really like, I think it can be a good thing. If you get on the same sleeping habits and nap times and schedules and everything. But like I said, it just depends on the personalities and if they clash or not. I had one guy who liked to talk on the phone the whole time, and I lasted one road trip with him. He was always on the phone. He snored. It was like, oh, no, I'm good. Like, hey, I need to find a new guy.
Give us a name.
Nope.
Oh, so disappointing.
Can't do it. I guess my best roommate was, I'll give you my best roommate. My best roommate was TJ Gagliardi. He was never there.
Where was he?
He was with Paul Stastny, hanging out in his room.
Mike McKenna was one of a backup with you at one point for not a long time, but he's a big racing fan. Did you spend a lot of time talking cars with him?
The second time around, yeah. I guess the first time around that I was kind of with him through, I guess it was like a training camp, and we really didn't know each other. But the second time he came through Ottawa there, we talked all the time. He had this little snake mug that he did his crosswords every day, and in between every third word that he got, we'd have a little conversation. So, and it always had something to do with either goal pads or what was this guy thinking, or something to do with racing with his dad and kind of the way things used to be.
He's a very cerebral guy. He recently had comments about Ottawa, and I don't know if you saw any of them or whatnot, but he wasn't a big fan of how the organization treated him. Now, I can only assume that it's probably not the same for you because of this organization treated you very well, I think, in your 10 years here for the most part.
You want an answer for that?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, I was treated very well. I mean, I can't personally say anything about, what happened with McKenna, but at the end of the day, everybody kind of has a good experience or a bad experience or kind of a null experience. And, mine was a good experience. I've also been in organizations where you think it's a bad experience, but then when you go somewhere else, hey, it wasn't that bad. So Mike had he had the career where he was in multiple organizations for multiple years. So he got to see and got treated from, whatever it might have been, 10 or 12 different organizations. He got to kind of get that feeling. So per se, Ottawa may not have treated him poorly. It just may not have been as good as somewhere else. And that kind of rubbed him the wrong way, as like, well, this organization treated me this way and I didn't get that same respect or that same thing. And that can definitely, sway your conversation as well.
All right, I'll move past that. And I have a couple of questions that are just off the wall a little bit. Do you have any fears?
You?
Fair.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I share that same fear, Andy, every day.
Okay. Are you afraid of snakes, or you have an alligator lives in your backyard? So I'm assuming that's not one. Is there anything that you're scared of?
I don't know. No, I don't really think about it, so I don't. I
Okay.
mean, I'm
If
sure.
you
I'm
saw
sure there's things.
Andy, if you saw a tarantula, a big ass, hairy fucking tarantula crawling across your room, would you shit your pants?
Probably not.
Okay, I would.
An Alex
Next
Ovechkin
question.
slap shot?
No, I mean, no.
Okay. All right.
No,
Do you have any phobias?
No. I thought I was scared of heights, but we went ziplining this summer in Hawaii. So that was like an awesome
Nice.
experience. And I thought I'd be a lot more scared of the heights than, because I remember it when I was in junior, we did like a team building exercise.
Oh,
And we went to a place where they had this thing where you did a bunch of stuff. And one of them was going up onto not a zip line, but going up to like a high wire, and you'd be harnessed in and your teammates would be holding onto the wire as you walked across the high wire. And I just couldn't do it. I sat there, panicked, freaked out. And so I thought for sure 20 years later that I'd be scared of ziplining, because you're up in the trees like that. And it just wasn't the case. I actually had a good time.
nice.
Okay, Meth, you don't like team bonding exercises? Is that what I'm getting?
No, well, it's just to add to Andy. This isn't my interview, of course, but I can relate because I remember the 1 year Hitch. God bless him. I love Hitch, but he brought in a bunch of friggin' Navy SEALs, and we went to this camp outside of Columbus where they had this, like, kind of like what Andy's talking about, like, these huge walls that you had to climb with ropes, and we had to carry these massive tank shells that weighed 90 pounds across like this ravine, and we had to figure out ways to get it right. So you're bagged by the first regular season game, like you're exhausted, and sure as shit we got pumped in that first game. So and the teams prior to us, when Doug McLean was the general manager there, they would go down to Florida, stay at like the Ritz-Carlton in Fort Lauderdale for a few days, relax. And here I am as a rookie, and I'm like looking forward to that. And then I hear about the audible that our coach pulls, and we end up doing boot camp. So the heights thing I can relate with Andy. It sucks, but you get past it.
Yeah, we had another experience where we went to West Point for Florida, right? So you got $60 million worth of athletes running through the forest doing these like army team bonding stuff, right? So like it was cool at the end of the day. Like maybe it was the second day we went and played paintball and stuff. Like
yeah, we did that too.
Guys ended up with bruises and stuff. But anyways, so we had these different exercises to do as a team, and you split up in the groups of 8 or whatever it was. So one was like flipping tractor tires, like, 100 yards and figuring out how to do it as a team. That one was like building a fort or building a house, a shelter out in the middle of the forest or whatever. And anyway, so we're up in this mountain there at West Point, and sure enough, someone gets hurt, right? So you got $60 million athletes running through the forest in the dark, right? Somebody has to get hurt, right? Somebody has to get hurt at all these events, right? Guess who gets hurt? $60 million is 06, 07 roughly. So Vokuma's the goalie, Ole Jokinen, Dvorak, Stumple, all these guys, right?
Yeah.
Jay Bouwmeester.
Jay Bouwmeester, right? So who gets hurt? Guess who gets hurt? Jacques Martin.
No.
Rolls his ankle, watching everybody just kind of strolling through the forest, right? You're like, our GM head coach got hurt. But
you guys must have had a ball with that one.
Yeah, it was great. But like I said, I mean, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, Florida always started the year like 2-8, right? And then they'd have a strong finish. Well, every year, Florida, they'd go to Colorado, they'd go to the owner's place, they do training camp in Colorado for 3 days. They go to Calgary, they go to Edmonton, they'd end up in Detroit, then Montreal, then back to Florida, right? Because it's hurricane season.
Right.
So they try to get out of there, but you spend 2 weeks on the road for training camp, and then your first 10 games at home.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I know. And now imagine this concept: going through training camp, which is incredibly difficult, and then just relaxing at your house for a couple of days before the regular season starts. Like, is that such a crazy idea? That's why I was always against all that nonsense. Like, I could understand them bringing people into the arena. They did that with Ottawa. I don't know if you remember that, Andy, where they would bring in some people to speak with us a little bit and offer leadership stuff. And that's where you and I discovered we were both very pragmatic people. But otherwise, I mean, it's like, why do you have to go travel somewhere and sleep in a tent for for a week when you could, you're playing a physical sport, you're exhausted.
And we both hated that 2 days with that team bonding.
I hated
leadership thing. So as much as it was like the lesser of two evils, we still hated it.
Yeah. Well, it felt very forced, right? Like, especially when most of the players, and we're all very outspoken guys. So when we do have new players, it's not hard to welcome them in. You're talking to them at the rink every day. So now all of a sudden you're doing all these extracurriculars, and they didn't feel genuine. They always felt forced, like you were forcing yourself to comply with these ridiculous exercises. And that's like just touching on what, because Wally's like, well, you don't like doing those things. It's like, no, I hated it. It was the bane of my existence.
That's a Jacques Martin thing though. When he was in Ottawa, I remember going to Charlevoix,
I heard
the casino, and all of a sudden guys are like 2 hours late and they're having to trape through the woods in the pitch dark, trying to get back to their vehicles or whatever, because something happened. Typical Jacques though, they were in the middle of the woods.
That's how you roll your ankle.
Yeah.
You'd think you would have known better. Andy, this is our one big question we need to know, and that's, what's your favorite snack if you were watching a movie?
Popcorn. PC all day long. Yeah, PC all day long.
Okay. Is there butter on this?
I've played some of my. I've played some of my best games after going to a movie all day, eating popcorn. Right, so like you're on the road, you go to a movie, you have popcorn, you get the big giant popcorn, and sometimes a slushy, sometimes a giant water, depending on how you're feeling. Then everything's closed at 9 o'clock at night for restaurants, so you order Chinese food. I mean, it's kind of like the thing to do,
You didn't go to a movie on game day though. It was the night before.
No, the night before. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, the night before. Yeah. So actually, I remember going. And I was in Florida. I was the backup in Florida, and I remember going with some of the training staff. We went bowling for the day. So you go bowl a couple games, we went to a movie, ate some popcorn, then we ordered Chinese food. I think it might have been around like Thanksgiving or something. So everything was closed, right? So like, it's all you could eat.
I appreciate that.
Who's your favorite teammate you played with? Let's go with just Ottawa.
Mark
You
Methot,
can't say Matt.
Excluding me. No, it puts him on the spot. I don't like the question, because every guy feels compelled to say me or something. Andy, aside from Mark Methot, who else did you really like hanging out with outside of the arena?
Probably Clarky.
Yeah.
Clark MacArthur. Yeah, it's just a good home, fun-loving dude.
Well, dry sense of humor, a lot like you, incredibly sarcastic, grumpy as well.
Yes, he was. But I played with Clark in Rochester when I was in Florida, when I got sent back to the minors. So he and I kind of knew each other from then. So he and I got along really well in Ottawa, and it was kind of one of those things where again, it was awesome hanging out with him.
Do you see him now? He's in Florida somewhere, but I don't know how close he is to you.
He's in Palm Beach. I think he just had his third child, so I don't know. He's pretty busy.
Andy, didn't they sell their house down there and go back to Roch for a little bit, and now they're back in Palm Beach?
So they were renting in Palm Beach. He had his house in Roch, so then he went back to Roch, but I think they're moving down here full time. I don't know for sure. My wife talks to his wife a lot more than I talk to him. So
yeah, fair enough.
Right,
usually how it works.
So I got to ask you, because I should have asked it earlier on. And you're going into Buffalo, where there's a lot of turmoil and turnover. How much do you pay attention to that, knowing there's so much talk about Jack Eichel and all that stuff that's going on? Do you just try to ignore it all and show up to camp, or do you pay attention to how that's playing out?
I don't know the details of it all, so it's tough for me to kind of make a comment on, or kind of make an assumption there of anything that's kind of going on. So I like to always think to, control what you can control, and I've got no control over what's going on there. The only thing I can do is kind of go in there with an open mindset and try to get a temperature of the room, get a temperature of the guys, and see where they're at, and see kind of, what's going on there. And that's, I think that's the best thing I can do, is just not worry about the turmoil or whatever's happened in the past. It's how do we go and put the right foot forward and they make a step in the right direction for them.
And have they told you if they expect you to play a lot? Like, has there been any discussion of what they expect from you ice work wise, I should say?
I have no idea. I talked to Don Granato briefly, and it was, very short, but it was like, hey, we're going through some change. And he goes, I know you've been through, this type of, situation before. every team kind of goes through, being in last place and getting high draft picks, and then what do they do with it, right? So my conversation with Don was, let's get the right people involved. Let's get the right people around these core kids to show them the way, and so that they can make strides when the next draft picks come through, so that they can continue to improve and get better. I mean, they've kind of been spinning their wheels for a few years, and that's as far as the guys they're bringing in, that's their job and our job to try to get those wheels some traction and start moving them, north.
Well, we do wish you luck. I hope that you can plan it so that win number 9 and 300 is on the day that you come to Ottawa. But I guess you'd probably want to win more than that beforehand. So I'll leave that up to you. However, I've been fortunate enough through my career to sit around with a few of your milestones. I remember being in New Jersey, I think, when you played your 300th game, and there's been a few others. So we wish you luck. We appreciate you stopping by, and I can't wait to perhaps see you back on the ice, and look forward to seeing your game here in Ottawa, hopefully. Fantastic job done by Craig Anderson. Now, you know what? Even for as crusty as he was, I still miss him in the nation's capital. As we welcome in Craig to the show, of course, brought to you by facesmag.ca. We like to add another face, so why not add it? Sponsored by Faces. Check out their latest edition that includes Austin Watson on the cover, and he shares his story throughout his NHL career. Okay, guys. Andy, there's a couple, we've talked about memorable moments, and I will say one of them that we've talked a lot to death, but it's still one I'll never forget as long as I probably can remember. And that is the night that he returns in Edmonton, leaving the hospital with Nicole and going to play that game. And he posts the shutout. I think it's 2-0 in Edmonton. He's in the tunnel, as you know, he's coming out to be the first star, and you can see he's tearing up. And as he comes out, Cam Talbot, the Edmonton Oilers goalie, is waiting on the bench just to kind of support him and show, you know what, I'm here for you. That was one of the most emotional things I've seen done in the NHL in an awfully long time.
Yeah, it was nice. And he was emotional in the room too. After when he came in, you could see it. So happy for him. Big moment. And we never touched on it, but I think it's been spoken on lots already. And but it was really nice to see for him and Nicole.
So what's that room like when he arrives? Like, I know from everything that he's told me and everything I've heard, he didn't really talk much and there wasn't much said.
No, he came in the room and we all kind of got up and clapped for him and gave him a hug and whatever. And you could tell he was emotional a little bit, and we couldn't have been happier for him. I mean, we just played against the Edmonton Oilers and did a pretty good job against them. And he comes in, first star, very emotional. We're all hugging, and yeah, it was just a nice feeling. But not a whole lot of words needed to be said. You know what I mean? I mean, I think the actions and everything that had been gone on kind of spoke for itself.
So then what's the bench like as the minutes, I guess, count down and there's a chance that he's got a shutout? Like, is there no chance that they're getting a shot on goal type feeling?
Well, you're trying, right? I mean, but
Edmonton.
You're also playing against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, so it's a little hard. But you're puckering up a little, right? You're kind of hoping that nothing bad happens out there and that we can hang on. And I think the cards were just in our favor that day with everything that was happening. It was an emotional game for everybody.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, he touched on a couple things with him as far as during that interview. And I wanted to kind of circle back on it. Methot, I could tell that when you guys were talking about those training camp activities, that maybe that was something that you'd had some experience with in the past. And there was maybe something, but it was the Andy interview. So you didn't want to just barge in there and knock it all down. Looking back on it, like, did you look forward to those training camp activities ever? Or were those just like another thing you had to do leading into the season?
Because we would skate. It's a good question, Craig. Cause like we would do, for people who don't know what we're talking about, during training camp, you work like a dog all morning and afternoon. I'm not complaining about that. I enjoy doing that. But then instead of going home and eating and resting, teams have these ideas for team building where you have to go do like some silly activities together, where you go into a room and we're all divided into groups and we have to cook like a meal together or something. And like, by the way, for almost all of us, these are players that I've already been playing with for a couple of years. So all I'm thinking is I'm very tired and I just want to go home. But that was me. And that could be just me being crusty and a grump. And Andy, I think that kind of resonated with Andy as well. But teams, they try to do these things, they'll bring people in to talk to the group, and, you know, God bless them. I know the heart's in the right place, but I want to say 3/4 of the time, it's an absolute waste. But that's just the way the business works. I know teams are looking for an edge. So it was cool. Like when we were in Dallas, they brought in a Navy SEAL, like a SEAL Team 6 guy. I thought that was cool because he was to the point. He was concise. He was only there for 30 minutes. He hit on all the important points for team building, and then that was done. We weren't sitting around the arena for 3 hours after. So that was my 2 cents on it. And I wanted to chime in more to talk about it, but I couldn't.
Did you go to Ocala? Were you one of the times you went to Eugene's ranch, Florida?
No, but in Columbus with Ken Hitchcock, he wanted us to go do this thing outside of Columbus, Ohio, out in the woods, where we had to do all these military activities for 2 days. And I think I've told this story before, but a bunch of guys got hurt. We're carrying around these like 150-pound like tank shells, and we have to share the load with other players. And like, it was just crazy, like we would do paintball. I think one year we did paintball. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Other years the team had gone to like Fort Lauderdale for a couple of days. I never had the pleasure of experiencing that. To me, that's more my pace. But again, it's up to the coaching staff and the general manager, and it varies.
If you could design, like, what would be the perfect training camp activity, team building? what would Mark Methot design as that one?
It's totally gonna be shooting.
Yeah, no. No, you know what? Like, I'm all for doing one activity when the camp ends and you have like a 3 or 4 day period before your first game or whatever. Maybe you go to the gun range, or you go bowling, or you do some stupid activity like that that's fun, or you have a nice big team dinner perhaps. But that would be my style. Training camp itself, when the fitness testing comes around, I get it. You need to have it. You need to hold players accountable and make sure they're working hard in the summer. I wouldn't change any of that. I think it's just the activity stuff I would maybe tweak a little.
You mentioned dinners there for a second. I wanted to ask you something, because we've had a few guys that have said that they're in the Mark Methot Early Bird Dinner Club, but this list is starting to add up. How big is this list? Here's who I got on the list. I got Andy and Neil. They both said it. Stone, Smitty, Bobby. Is there anybody else that I'm missing?
So I'm not looking that crazy after all, right?
No, not at all.
I think once people start to come out of their shells a little, I've got a good crowd. So there'd usually be about eight people, and there's more even, where you be kind of like split up into different groups, right? Because you just get your food quicker if you're 4 versus 8 or 10. And guys go to different restaurants. But yeah, there's a bunch of guys, and we would rotate right among the group, depending on who you were talking to on the way back to the hotel from practice, and whoever you were lining something up with. And that's generally how it worked.
Am I missing anybody? Brass?
Brass would join us as well. Yeah. Okay. And, Jared Cowan, when he was playing with us, he was also pretty early. There's a lot of guys. Colin Greening, Eric Condra. Pager was one of the late guys.
Yeah,
Pager was a late guy.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that up, because I keep hearing guys, and they're almost talking like, those sitcoms where you got to keep like girls in the different parts of the restaurant. Like, it almost sounds like everybody's like me and meth. And I was like, okay, like this list is getting pretty big. But okay, I think it's just maybe you're not as crazy as we thought you were.
No, and I think ultimately I also chose wisely, because like when I would go eat with Eric and Dion, we'd always have to play the credit card game, and those guys did big, nice bottles of wine and whatever it was. So the bill was always substantially larger than the ones that I was used to paying. Yeah. And of course they always wanted to gamble with it. I couldn't do that. It ruined my whole evening. So I'm more conservative. I'd stuck with my group, never went back with Eric and Dion. And that's kind of how I approached the road.
Okay. All right. I feel like we got to the bottom of that one. The last thing I really wanted to touch about with this Andy interview is, Brent, you asked him about kind of taking who was a player that he wanted to kill, right? It was firing pucks at his head and stuff like that. You guys each seemed like you knew who he was going to mention before, but he mentioned both Smitty and Neeler. Were those like the two notorious guys, or is there anybody else? Those are the guys that just blindly.
Well, Hoff would shoot high sometimes too. Mike Hoff, but I think typically, at least with a sniper, he knows where his puck is going. Whereas the guy like Smitty and Neeler, and myself even, but I never shot high. But typically guys like that have a little less control over their shots, and Smitty would shoot it really hard. So yeah, I mean, I can understand why Andy kind of mentioned them. They were your typical suspects, or culprits, I should say, when it came to the high shots.
You can always see, right? Like you can see the guy who comes down, and it could be Eric Condra, and I don't know it for sure, but some guy just whistles it at his head. you can always see the goalie's head turn.
Oh,
and
yeah.
you know exactly what he's saying to him.
Oh,
like
for
you
sure.
could see the anger coming out of him without even hearing a word.
Yeah,
And then
I agree.
I saw Ray Emery was very competitive. We'll put it that way. I remember him and Chris Neal getting into it along the glass in the corner. There was I don't know if they had to be separated, but I don't know if any punches were thrown. And then Brian McGrattan would irritate somebody occasionally here and there. And so, and you're on the ice 100 times a year practicing, right? Like there's going to be some confrontation. They're all alpha type males. And so you see some of that happen in practices where guys start mouthing off to each other. It's always the same suspects.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's so far from reality, right? Like if you're in a typical office environment, like you're a government worker or whatever you are, you can't get away with 99.9% of the things we say to each other when we're unhappy on the ice and it gets physical, like you guys just mentioned. You can't cross check a guy in the office when you're pissed off. I'm sure a lot of people would like to, but yeah, that's sort of the environment we grow up in, right? So it can change you a little bit, but again, that's part of the job.
Or you see the slashing of ankles a lot, right? Because you guys are battling, you're hitting, somebody's not happy at 10 in the morning to get bumped, and I don't blame them. And then all of a sudden you just see the two hands going at each other. Yeah, there's
and that's very typical, right? It happens way more often than people realize. Oftentimes it gets brushed off where you kind of realize in the moment after you've done something, okay, he's my teammate, I'm going to back off, and then it gets squashed. But you don't really catch a lot of that stuff on camera, right? So fans are unaware of it, but I'm telling you, and you guys both know from watching, it happens almost all the time.
And it used to happen a lot more.
Yes.
A lot less phones, right?
Yes.
So everything is being recorded and then all instantly put out there. There used to be a whole lot more of that. So now it just gets settled in the back.
Yeah. Even in junior, when I played junior, our team captain we had there, it was Danny Bois. He was a scary human being. He actually ended up in Ottawa's farm system and played in Binghamton for quite a bit. But guys like him, and so they kept everybody accountable on the ice. And if I wasn't doing something properly, or if I went after a guy too hard, I knew a guy like him was coming at me, and he literally would drop the gloves and just grab you and threaten to beat the shit out of you. And that was just the way that things work. But you mentioned it. Now that everyone's got a phone and everyone's a reporter, I think players are a little more reluctant to get into a big scuffle because, it just brings drama to the team.
It's not worth it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Besides firing pucks at the goalie's head, are there any other kind of unwritten rules as far as practice etiquette goes, do's and don'ts? What are some things that maybe fans wouldn't realize that are actually big deals? You
got to finish all the plays properly. So when you're in practice, you have to try to make it as game-like as possible. So when you're going down on a 2-on-0 and you're going to the net, you have to stop right at the net for that rebound. If you don't stop at the net and you curl away when the goalie makes a save, the coaches lose it on you. They do not like that stuff. There's a lot of small little details that become very habitual in practice that you don't really realize until you're there at the pro level, because it's not always enforced in junior or in minor hockey, obviously. But it's a very serious wake-up call for a player once you get to that pro level. I could be on the blue line and getting a pass from a forward or someone on a transition, and I might stick handle a couple times. We would call that dusting it off. Before I would make a pass to my partner or somewhere else, coach would blow that down. You can't do that. You're wasting time. Corral it, move it right away. And those are all the adjustments you have to make as a player. Being on the ice on time. You're not on the ice on time, you're going to get sent home. If you're a young player, do not get off the ice before the veterans. Make sure if you're a rookie, you're the last guys on the ice. You're going to pick up all the pucks, then you get off. And it's crazy, but it becomes so normalized in that workspace that you don't really think anything of it until you have a conversation like this afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, for us, go ahead, Brent. Sorry.
I was just say, what's interesting about that whole picking up pucks after practice, and I've noticed it more last year than I think any other, because Ottawa is so young and so full of 22-year-old players and younger. They're all still on the ice.
Yeah.
So there's six of them now picking up pucks.
And I can tell you that maybe the majority of the time they shouldn't still be on the ice. You should just get off the ice, go get your recovery. But they just want
to hang out. That's
I know.
The thing.
But I think a lot of it is not by choice, Wally. A lot of guys like myself, when I played, you're exhausted. You just had a full practice. You just worked harder than any of the vets because you're a young guy. And now you're expected to just sit out there and pretend like you're doing something productive on a brutal ice surface full of snow. You're not able to do anything. It's you can argue it two ways. Some guys should be out there shooting pucks, but oftentimes for a young player that maybe is playing 20 some odd minutes tonight, he should probably get off the ice. But because of that culture, you have to stay out there.
No, that's fair. But I will say when I watched, and it was in January, I have the video of it. Like you see Stützle and I can't remember if it's Drake.
It was Norris too. I think I remember this.
Like
one,
they were doing curling.
Yeah.
And there was guys that are just like trying to play keep away. Like, I didn't get the sense that they needed to be on the ice. I got the sense that they just flat out wanted just to hang out. But it was, don't get me wrong, new season, and they just had started playing again, right? So they just had been off the ice for months. Right. So that was part of it. So exactly. I don't disagree, because I remember Jacques Martin, Brian Murray, most coaches, like, guys, off the ice now. Guy Boucher was another one, right? Get off the ice.
Yeah, they'll say that after Christmas. If you're like on a run and the team's doing very well and you want your players rested, coaches will actively go out of their way and say, guys, come on, get off, because players are not going to go off unless you tell them to. And that's oftentimes for optics.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thanks for clearing some of those up. Because to be honest with you, like, I'll sit there sometimes and there'll be times like I don't understand why. Like I think it was Max Verno. He got an earful because he'd never done he got signed, and his first like skate with the team was a game day skate or something like that, and he was one of the first guys off. And I remember like everybody was like, what do you do? And so it's like, I guess you don't totally know, right?
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. I would understand that on a practice day, but imagine on a game day, like the NBA guys, when you're on the road and you see the NBA guys on a game day, they have the same schedule as us.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less physical. It is more physical than most people think. But my point is, they just do a little shoot around in the morning. Mm-hmm. They're warming up. It's so casual. Coaches aren't really even around. You're just doing what you got to do to wake your body up a little bit. Hockey, it's all about skate, hard practice in the morning. And then it's like your legs, you feel your legs in the evening. You're tired. And it's like, it's so dumb. And we're getting away from that now, which is really good. I've noticed toward my last few years at the NHL level, it's starting to change. But man, oh man, like culturally, they got to make some changes there, because it's just so old school. And, you know, you used to do pregame skates to get the hungover guys to sweat it out. Now, like, guys aren't hungover in the morning. Like, they're full of protein and water and good food. Like, they don't need to be exerting themselves. Anyway, I guess I'm preaching to nobody when I'm having this discussion with myself. No. So I'll cut it off there.
Well, you're right though, because like, if you look at the NHL, like, the morning skates now, those are just for media, right? Like, you can kind of touch up a few things or maybe make a few small adjustments, but it's so media can come and talk to you and whatever else. So it's crazy. It's nice when they move to the more kind of optional ones later.
There's no media avail on game days for the CFL, for the NFL, right? Like we don't have to have them anymore. It used to just be, as Meth said, for the night before to sweat the alcohol out. It's unnecessary now.
The Esposito rule, I guess, is what it was.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think that kind of ties that one up. So, hey, good job with Andy, boys. I thought he'd do. Hopefully, he gets 300. I know that's the number he's chasing. So, hopefully, he can lock that down in Buffalo. For anybody else who's chasing stuff, we got some stuff to give away. Our friends at Gong Show have given us another puck luck game to give away. This thing's awesome. 2s, 4s. Set it up at parking lot, backyard. Cottage season's kind of running out, but maybe you can sneak it in there still. So yeah, they've been the best. So head on over to gongshow.com and check out their new hats for their fall lineup. It's pretty good. They're killing it too for our golf tournament, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a second. But we got another puck luck thing to give away, so let's go ahead and do that. Another little Andy question for you. If you remember his first game with the Ottawa Senators, a 1-0 shootout win over the Toronto Maple Leafs was pretty epic. Who scored the lone shootout goal to win Andy's first game as an Ottawa Senator? If you know the answer to that, send us your answer on Twitter and be sure to tag at Gong Show Gear and use the hashtag Wally Methot, and we're going to announce the winner on our next show.
Nice.
Speaking of Gong Show stuff, we have new lids coming in. We have a couple new styles.
Ooh,
so you know.
They're nice. Gong Show does such a good job.
Yeah, man, they're nice.
I don't say this lightly, because I've known the company for a long time. They make really good, nice stuff. Wally and Craig, I'm sure you guys are aware too. It's just, I'm encouraging people, go out and check it out. They got some really nice fall lineup stuff.
Pretty sweet hoodie you got on there too, by the way.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm getting at. And these things are awesome. It's really legitimately high quality clothing. That's why I love it. I wear it all the time.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm the same. Mike, you know, it's funny. Like before this whole little show we did, my kid has been modeling for Gong Show for like 5 years.
Yeah, I know.
He just did a shoot. So there's always been this tie-in. Anyway, phenomenal stuff they've always given away. So
good stuff.
Yeah, they do some pretty good job. Speaking of which, so everybody at the golf tournament gets a hat, by the way.
Nice.
The golf tournament's tomorrow, guys. It's a sellout. Like, it's presented by Giovanni's, and we're raising money for DIFD, as we've talked about in the past. Like,
yeah,
I was totally terrified of this at the beginning, going, is anybody going to show up?
It'll be fun.
There's a waiting list. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great. It's gonna be well done. I think the weather, like, fingers crossed, looks like it's gonna be a beautiful day. So we're gonna have some fun. I may or may not sneak some beverages on the course. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Maybe I will. And we're going to have a good time. So I don't know how my speech is going to look in the evening. We'll see what happens.
I'll take over for you. Yeah, by the way, Ian Mendez is the MC. Stu Schwartz is our auctioneer. Chris Neal is going to be there. There's a chance we're going to see a couple of current Ottawa Senators there.
Be fun.
Andy Scott, the big time agent, is going to be there as well.
Andy will be there. Sean Simpson will be there. Right.
There's lots of, anyway, pretty excited. And of course, the big star of this will be Craig, as he tees off with Woody and Ian and Alex.
Oh, that's going to be a good group.
We'll see if we finish the 18, but yes.
I'll say this. I'm not driving to the golf course. I am getting in an Uber.
Wow. This is big.
I don't do that very often. I'm pretty stingy. I get made fun of for not letting loose too often. I think I'm going to let loose on Friday.
Okay.
Well, we may not have a show Monday.
I may embarrass all of you.
That's okay.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, that's gonna be fun.
All right. Anyway, that's our show. We'll be at the golf course on Friday. We'll tell you all about it on Monday. Frank Saravelli is going to stop by. It should be. We'll post about it. Should be a noon live show. So we look forward to that. It's we always say thanks for watching our show. It's time for us to drive on out of here. You're watching the Wally Methot Show, powered by Barhaven Ford. See you next time.
I like the jersey and the bobbleheads. You got my bobblehead back there or no?
I do. No, I don't. The only goalie I have is Tugnut, because my dad, oddly enough, gave me a couple random ones. I've got Redden, Boschman, Tugnut, Stone, Neal on this side. So yeah.
All right,
can you send me one?
I have one. Yeah, I got a whole box full of them in my closet still. I haven't gotten rid of them yet.
Well, autograph it for me too, please.
I'll bring it in January.
It'll be on eBay.
22nd.
There we go. I'll be on eBay. Yeah, that's nice.